What happened to Italian women during World War II is a story that history books don't always tell in detail. It's a story of pain, struggle, survival, and resilience. The war wasn't just about battles and soldiers. It also brought unimaginable suffering to ordinary people, especially women. But what exactly did they go through? How did their lives change during the war? And why is this history often forgotten? Stay with me until the end, because this is a part of World War II history that everyone needs to know. During World War II, Italian women found themselves trapped between multiple forces: Nazi Germany, Mussolini's fascist regime, Allied bombings, and later, the brutal reality of occupation and war crimes. Some were used as propaganda tools. Others were forced into labor camps, and many were victims of violence. But they were not just victims. They also fought back in powerful ways. By the end of this video, you'll see how Italian women suffered, survived, and resisted in ways history rarely talks about. So let's go back in time and uncover what really happened. The role of women in Italy before World War II. Before Italy became deeply involved in the war, life for women was already restricted under Mussolini's fascist regime. The dictator had a clear vision for Italian women. They were expected to stay at home, raise large families, and serve the nation by producing future soldiers. Mussolini launched policies that encouraged women to have at least 5 children, promising them financial rewards and medals for large families. Women were discouraged from seeking employment in most sectors. Jobs were prioritized for men to ensure a strong and disciplined workforce. Education for girls focused on domestic skills rather than academics or professional careers. But despite the government's push for women to be housewives, many Italian women were already part of the workforce, especially in factories, textile industries, and agriculture. However, when World War II began in 1939, everything changed. The war begins. Women are forced into new roles. When Italy officially entered World War II in June 1940, the country was completely unprepared for the realities of war. As young men were sent to fight on the front lines, a massive labor shortage emerged, forcing women to take on jobs they were previously denied. Factories and industry. Women were hired in weapon factories, ammunition plants, and textile industries. Agriculture. With men gone, women had to take over farms to keep food production going. Health and nursing. Thousands of women worked as nurses in field hospitals, treating wounded soldiers under extreme conditions. Volunteer work. Some women joined organizations like the Italian Red Cross, helping civilians affected by bombings. For the first time, women were doing the same jobs as men, often under dangerous conditions. But instead of being appreciated, many were paid less and treated as temporary workers. The government still saw them as mothers first, workers second. But as the war intensified, their roles kept expanding. Life under fascism and Nazi occupation. The collapse of Mussolini's regime. By 1943, Italy was in complete chaos. The war was going badly, and the Italian people were losing faith in Mussolini. In July 1943, Mussolini was arrested, and Italy signed an armistice with the Allies. But instead of peace, Italy now faced 2 wars. The Germans invaded northern and central Italy, turning the country into a battleground. The Allies were advancing from the south, bombing cities and fighting against German forces. For Italian women, this period was a nightmare. Brutality under German occupation. After Mussolini's fall, Hitler sent German troops to take control of Italy. This occupation lasted from 1943 to 1945 and was one of the darkest times for Italian civilians. Forced labor. Thousands of women were taken to Germany as forced laborers, working in harsh conditions without pay. Mass executions. If Italian partisans, resistance fighters, attacked German troops, entire villages were punished. Women and children were often among the victims. Sexual violence. German soldiers frequently targeted women, leading to widespread rape and abuse. Many Italian women were also forced into prostitution by occupying forces. One of the most brutal massacres was Marzabotto, 1944, where over 770 Italian civilians, including women and children, were slaughtered by Nazi SS troops. The role of women in the Italian resistance. Despite facing extreme violence, Italian women were not just victims. They fought back. Thousands of women became part of the Italian resistance, joining partisan groups that fought against the Nazis and Mussolini's remaining fascists. Who were the partisan female partisans? Women in the resistance played various roles. Spies and messengers. Many women secretly carried weapons, maps, and intelligence reports between resistance groups. Combat fighters. Some women took up arms and joined battles alongside male partisans. Medics and caretakers. Others provided shelter, food, and medical aid to wounded fighters. By 1945, about 35,000 Italian women were officially recognized as part of the resistance. They helped weaken German forces and played a major role in Italy's liberation, the Allied liberation, hope and new fears. When the Allies advanced through Italy in 1944-45, they were seen as liberators. But for many Italian women, liberation came with new dangers. Bombings and starvation. Many cities have been destroyed, and food shortages left women struggling to feed their families. Abuse by Allied soldiers. In some areas, Italian women were targeted by Allied troops. One of the worst cases happened in central Italy, where thousands of women were assaulted by Moroccan soldiers in the French army. These war crimes, known as Marocchinate, left thousands of women traumatized. Many of these crimes were ignored by history for years. The war ends, but the struggles continue. When World War II ended in 1945, Italy had to rebuild from the ground up. What happened to women after the war? Many women had lost their husbands, fathers, and sons. Thousands were left with war trauma, but had no support. Those who had been victims of war crimes were often silenced. They were afraid to speak out because of shame or fear being blamed. Despite all they had done during the war, society still expected women to return to traditional roles. Many were pushed out of their wartime jobs and told to focus on marriage and family life again. But one major change happened. Women finally won the right to vote. In 1946, Italy became a republic, and for the first time in history, women were allowed to vote. This was a direct result of their efforts during the war. They had worked, fought, and sacrificed, and now they were finally recognized as citizens with equal rights. The history of Italian women during World War II is a powerful reminder of both suffering and strength. These women endured war, occupation, forced labor, and violence. Yet they also showed incredible resilience, courage, and resistance. For years, their stories were ignored. War history often focuses on generals, battles, and political leaders. But what about the women who held their families together through starvation and bombings? What about the women who risked their lives to fight against oppression? What about those who were victims of unimaginable brutality but were never given justice? Their contributions didn't just help in the war. They helped shape Italy's future. The bravery of women in the resistance played a major role in defeating fascism. Their work in factories and hospitals kept the country running when everything was falling apart. And after the war, their fight for recognition led to women finally gaining the right to vote in 1946, marking a turning point in Italian history. But their suffering should not be forgotten. History is not just about victories. It's about learning from the past. These stories teach us about the true cost of war, the strength of ordinary people, and the importance of standing up against injustice. If you found this video insightful, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to support more content like this. Your engagement helps keep history alive. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.